I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
You go to Hawaii in your head all the time, but when you're actually ready to go, there's Expedia. Flights, hotels, vacation homes, cars. Save more when you bundle so you can stop dreaming and start saving. Expedia, the one place you go to go places. Members only. Savings vary.
You know, you grow up with a certain idea of what travel is based on like what you experience with your parents or like the people that take you traveling. And then I think through your podcast, reading blogs online and lots of different, YouTube videos about travel and things like that, realizing that there's so many different ways and styles of travel, and that really like you can test out different things and find what best suits you and what is the most fulfilling to you. And then, continue to, that's always adapting. Like, it's not just like, okay, this is what kind of traveler I am, and I always have to do this kind of trip. No, it's like something that kind of evolved over the years.
That is Kyle Cohenour. He is today's guest. He's a listener of this show. I've known him for quite some time, and it's been amazing to see him go from this desire to be out exploring the world full time to actually doing it. And you're going to hear the entire journey today. And I think this is a great one to put out on New Year's Eve, because any story, at least for me, that reminds me to pursue a dream and not give up on it, to keep a dream alive, whether it's travel or otherwise, you start to see how that longevity, that kind of mentality of just being persistent with your own dreams can pay off, and how being adaptable with them and how they evolve, as Kyle mentioned at the top of the show, can surprise and delight you along the way on your own journey. And it can also be a practical tool, right? And we get into a variety of different travel topics in this conversation. We talk about his solo travel experience. He met a lovely lady while he was traveling, so we talk about that. He shares his advice for working remotely, why that even connects you more to locals in some places, how he talked to his boss about that, and you'll get some advice there if you're in that situation and you're wondering, well, how can I actually pitch my boss on working remotely? We talk about destinations, of course. He spent a lot of time in South America and Mexico, budget-wise, what to expect, some destination talk, traveling with work and without work, all of these things that you're probably going to encounter if you take off long-term or full-time and you live a pretty heavy-duty travel-based lifestyle. It's going to shift. It's going to change. You're going to have these different experiences. And I think Kyle's story really exemplifies that journey of going from a dream to kind of figuring it out in real time and then making it sustainable and all the things that come along with that. So if you're ready to get inspired for the coming year, this is a great one to just reinforce that idea of not only keeping your dreams alive, but taking them seriously. You got to take your dreams seriously, and they'll take you seriously. So let's buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. My friend Kyle is here. Back in August 2021, he made a major life change. He sold most of his belongings, left his apartment in Florida, and he embarked on this journey as a location-independent digital nomad. He's been to 14 countries since then. He spent 2 years living and slow traveling in Mexico, 4.5 months exploring South America, and 3 months calling Madrid, Spain, his home. And why do I share all of this? Because I think when you start to see how just somebody who has this desire and this intention and stays with it is able to fulfill that and live this life of travel. So he shares some of his advice and experiences in this episode. And stick around on the back end. I'm going to leave you with a quote that I think summarizes this idea of taking the long-term view when it comes to your dreams. This is a powerful one to send you off into the new year with. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Kyle. And don't forget, we have a newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. If you haven't signed up to keep in touch over there, please do that. It is free. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers.
Where are you from?
Yo digo que no me importa lo que estás haciendo, pero a tus amigas les pregunto qué ha sido de ti. Tú dices que no te importa si yo vivo o muero, pero yo sé.
Kyle Cohenour, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time coming because we've known each other for a while now. You were just kind of mentioning before we hopped on that I think you were starting to think about this travel lifestyle back in 2015 or something.
Yeah. I recently moved back to Florida after being on the West Coast and doing some traveling out there, and was back in an office job, which was good for a lot of reasons, but not so great for the travel lifestyle, of course, like going to an office 5 days a week. But yeah, listening to your podcast and other travel podcasts kind of helped restart the travel dream and get me thinking about different ways of traveling and all the different places out there that I wanted to go, and getting inspiration that helped me like take my first solo travel trip in 2017.
You've been in the listening community for a while, and I think I'm always encouraging people to write in or just get in touch, because it's important to share these stories, and everybody's journey is unique. And also, I think there are always like some great lessons to pull out of each person's unique journey. And it's nice when those stories, come from within the community here. So if you're listening, maybe this is you maybe this is you in a few years, reach out and get in touch. And I appreciate that you did. And I guess I just wanted to start with the travel dreams, right? Like, it sounds like you were doing some traveling, but you hadn't taken that first solo trip till 2017. And I want to talk about solo travel because I think that's a very impactful thing. And it sounds like it was for you as well. But just give us a little bit of context before that 2017 trip to Colombia, right? Like, what was your travel experience up until then?
Yeah, so I was blessed to start traveling at a pretty young age, like throughout the US, doing some road trips with my family, my parents' family vacations. I guess first international trip was to Niagara Falls when I was like in middle school, but
Nice.
I think we didn't visit like French Canada really, so it was different enough, but like didn't really get that like culture shock experience, I think, until.
Well, I mean, unless you saw like the Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, that's a culture shock over there. And
It's true.
It's like, it's such a beautiful waterfall, but then you have all these sort of tchotchke shops, and yeah, it's interesting.
Right. So I consider my first real international trip was I mean, I shouldn't say real international trip, but the first one that I really experienced like that culture shock and a lot of the joys of like experience a very different culture was in 2006 when I went to Mexico for the first time. It was with my high school Spanish class, which if you took 3 years, you got to go on the international trip to Mexico. So that was a great motivation to keep with it. And we went to Oaxaca City first, and we did a homestay with a family, which was a really cool experience. And then we went to Mexico City for a couple days, and then Playa del Carmen at the end of the trip. And I think it was really that trip that like got me hungry to internationally travel more, and realize like what a difference it makes being able to speak the local language, even if very poorly at that point, I would say after only like 3 years of learning. Um, but just what a difference that made being able to connect with locals and learn more about the culture and what it's actually like to live in a place and the differences and were always very intriguing to me. And I think from that point, it was always a goal to actually live in a foreign country for like 3 to 6 months and get to experience more deeply what it was like to be in a foreign country and live a little bit of the local experience.
So how long was it between that 2006 trip and when you actually kind of lived temporarily in a foreign country?
Almost 11 years.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes it takes time for various reasons, right? Like you can have the goal, but depending on what's going on in life, sometimes it's not always immediate. But I think like one of the big themes in this show is like keeping the dream alive, for lack of a better term, I guess, which might sound a little cheesy, but I think people know what I mean, right? It's like this kind of like travel-based lifestyle for whatever period of time can be attained if you just hold on to it and kind of don't let it go as a thing. Was this something that was just kind of always like lingering in the back of your head, or were you very much kind of like working towards it, or did you get kind of stuck up in the job thing? Like, how did that unfold for you?
Yeah, I would say it was always something, a dream that was there that I knew I really wanted to fulfill at some point in my life. I did one more two international trips when I was in college, but they were short, like 2 week long trips, New Zealand and then to France, but only like one place in France. And then once I started working, I was working office jobs in the US and usually only had like 2 weeks of vacation a year. A lot of that, since I was living in Florida and my family was in Wisconsin, a lot of that was spent like going home to see family and stuff. So I really didn't have that much like vacation time available to travel internationally. And then also just not really being in the financial state for some years after college to be able to afford to travel internationally. And
Sounds very familiar.
yeah, and I think, you grow up with a certain idea of what travel is based on like what you experience with your parents or like the people that take you traveling. And then I think through your podcast, reading blogs online and lots of different, YouTube videos about travel and things like that, realizing that there's so many different ways and styles of travel, and that really like you can test out different things and find what best suits you and what is the most fulfilling to you, and then continue to, that's always adapting. Like it's not just like, okay, this is what kind of traveler I am and I always have to do this kind of trip. No, it's like something that kind of evolved over the years. And then in spring of 2020, kind of the silver lining of the pandemic for me was my whole company went fully remote. So it was like overnight, I went from being like 4 days in the office, one day at home to being able to work fully remote. And so at that point, I was like, well, why should I stay here if I can work from anywhere? So I started coming up with a plan to, give up my apartment, get rid of most of my things, and make it a reality. Of course, after talking with my boss and like getting his blessing to do like a 1 month trial of like living, traveling in Mexico and working. And he was kind of like, as long as you can show up to your meetings and do your work well and we hit our goals, like I don't really care exactly where you are, just make sure you have good internet.
What other advice would you share from that conversation? Like, might be somebody listening who wants to share a similar conversation with their boss and, try to convince them for that. Because I think that could be a way in for some people, especially if you have a company that's skeptical, or, maybe it's just giving them the test, like laying the foundation for a little miniature experiment and proving to them that you can deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I did, which was really good, I think, just to know that I could do it with like the company's technology and everything, and there wasn't any technological issues, was I did like one day of working remotely from Mexico City in 2019 on a vacation.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. Just
I
to
told
try
my
it out.
boss, yeah, like I want to work this one day because in my job, like the first day of the month was always very important, and I didn't want to like put a big burden on like my colleagues. So I'm like, let me work one day just to like see how it goes and that I can do it and like have that experience of working from a totally different location than my home. So that was good to know that everything like worked well on the computer. I could show up to my meetings and everything. And then in 2021, in the fall of 2021, I actually took the big jump and made it happen. But I'd say advice for like having that conversation with your employer is just like have a good plan. Like I did a lot of research about different accommodations, and of course, internet is like the main concern. So I stayed for like my first 2 months with Selena Hostel Hotel because they have like a co-working space in every location. Read really good reviews about them always having like good internet quality and good like co-working spaces where they had like some meeting rooms and stuff like that. And then I think it's really important to always have like a plan B and a plan C for your internet because the worst thing that can happen is like you're not showing up to meetings because like the internet goes down, which when I first got to Mexico, I was staying in Sayulita, a little beach town, which doesn't have the best quality of internet. So I was like, I knew that, there was a couple Wi-Fi networks at the hostel, but if those went down, I'm like, okay, there's a cafe across the street, which I tested out and had really good Wi-Fi. And then also like I had an international plan on my phone. So like plan C, I could always like hotspot from my phone or like join from my phone to the meeting. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's really
think
good advice. I mean, yeah, you want to know where you're going to hop, skip, and jump to when things go. Because especially in the beginning, if you're starting the experiment and you're like, this is it, I got to prove to them. And then like day one, the internet goes out, or we're just like, uh-oh.
right.
No,
So
they're
I
going to
think
call me back home.
exactly. That was the biggest fear of like just, being able to perform well and show up at work so I could keep it going. So I think laying out the plan really clearly to my boss is like, this is where I'm staying. Like I have everything like booked for the whole first month. Like I have my plan A, plan B, plan C for my internet. So, like, don't worry, like I'm gonna be in a like quiet place where I can take calls and like do good work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. Just going into the conversation, kind of having it's also, those types of conversations can be really nerve wracking, especially like even if it's just you building it up in your head, they might be totally cool, but, or not, depending on your situation. But you just, those are the kind of things that you're just like, you can walk in and you just have a pit in your stomach. You're like, here we go. What if they say no? All this. But so also the other side benefit of that is that when you have the plan, you just like, you can just kind of methodically lay it out. Maybe you don't have to think so much about the emotional stuff, like, here's what I did, here's where I'm going to stay, this is why. It just kind of takes the pressure off the conversation because you just have your case prepared, which is nice. Yeah. I mean, I think that's good advice for, yeah, any of those types of situations, like, negotiating or whatever. Like, as long as you can kind of like justify your case, you can feel like you put your best foot forward and you came with a plan. It just, I don't know, it makes people comfortable. You're being proactive, like you're showing them you're going to be responsible before you're even, because some people might see that as maybe not as much now, but maybe they'll see that as like, well, they're not really going to do anything, or it's going to be an irresponsible decision. But you got to sell them on it.
Right. And it was really funny, kind of talking about like how you in your head you can get like more worried and anxious about it, then the conversation is actually going to go in a totally different direction. My boss's boss, who like approved it, he retired from the company like before I started the thing. And then like just as I was like in my second week in Mexico, a new boss of my boss started, and it was kind of like, should I tell him? Should I not? And like, well, I just won't bring it up unless like he asks where I'm from, where I'm working from. He'll just assume I'm in Florida. So he didn't know for some time, and then like eventually he asked because I didn't come to like some on-site event, and I was super nervous. And my boss was like, "Hey, like I had to tell him like you're in Mexico working remotely." And I was like, "Okay, I understand. Like, let's just see how it goes." And then it turned out he was a travel lover too, and he thought it was super cool. So then it was like every call that I joined with the team, he would like we'd do our little chit chat before we got the meeting going. He'd be like, "So Kyle, where in the world are you today?" And that was just kind of like something he'd ask like every once a month when we'd have our team meeting. So I think you can get really like nervous about how people respond, but until you like actually ask the question, you don't know, and you might be surprised.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show. Yeah, that's true. That's an important point because we often just assume that people are going to see it negatively. But what if it's actually the opposite? And I mean, that's happened to me too. I had a B2B platform I was running way back in the day. And I remember I was working from like Cambodia and Vietnam and all these places. And, I eventually just started telling some clients because the hours were just challenging and it was kind of hard to coordinate things. And they thought it was so cool. And it made them remember who I was. Like it made me stand out above, some of the competition or some other people. It was just something they remembered, and people can, whether they're travelers or not, some people, I feel like they got excited because they love travel. Others were like, oh, I'd love to do that. And it was kind of like aspirational. Of course you can have people that don't approve or whatever, but it could be that it makes you stand out and it actually improves your chances to be maybe promoted at the company or, other positive things. So it's an important point. Don't be afraid to put it out there, Now don't email me if you put it out there and you get fired or something.
Absolutely.
Be like, hey, I didn't tell you guys I'm down in, Peru working. It's like, what? No, but I think people can be receptive to it for sure. I mean, well, speaking of Peru, I know you just got back from Peru and Argentina, and I want to talk about like the travel experience down there, what that was like for you. But let's talk about this solo trip to Cartagena, right? This was in November 12th, 2018. I took a screenshot from your social media, unbeknownst to you, I guess. You said, hey, stoked to say that on Friday, I'm leaving on my fourth solo trip, heading to Cartagena, Colombia for 8 days. I'd never done a solo trip till 2017. When I first went to Colombia, I was overconfident in how much Spanish I remembered and scared of all the things I imagined could go badly. I actually went into a minor panic attack waiting to check in at the airport. You said, but I went and I ended up having one of the best weeks of my life. And then, yeah, you said you stumbled onto the podcast, and yeah, I don't need to like pump myself up here. You said some nice things about the podcast, but the point is I'm bringing this up because this idea of getting out and solo traveling and being scared, imagining all things that go badly to the point where you were having this panic attack while you were waiting to check in at the airport. A panic attack is usually, I'm not a doctor, but I'm guessing, like your anxiety peaks to the point where you have a panic attack. Right. And I think, solo travel is one of those things that it can bring up those feelings. Like if you don't have a lot of experience with it, it can bring up anxieties and fears and stuff like that. On the flip side, once you start getting it under your belt, it opens up so much. So I just wanted for you to talk about your experience leading up to the trip. Like, what made you keep going, even though you were like having the panic attack and everything? And what did you gain from the experience?
Yeah, it was. I remember it was a very like early morning flight. Didn't sleep that much the night before. Mixture of like nerves, and was at like a company outing with coworkers the night before. I think it was a football game, like having some beers and watching a game. And for me, it's always like the trip is always in your head, but then when that morning or like the day before, when you're actually finalizing the packing and stuff, it actually like sinks in that it's reality and it's happening. And for me, it was like in that line to like check in, and it was like, I don't know why, but I just started thinking of like all the things that could go wrong as like a solo traveler in a country, and it's like, Colombia is not known for having a lot of people that speak English. Like you really need to speak Spanish most of the time. And I was like, oh, I really haven't practiced that much in like 10 years, my Spanish. Probably should have done that more before this trip. And yeah, I just got a little overwhelmed, and I think I was a little dehydrated too. But thankfully, like after that checking in, I'd like drank some water, sat down for a minute, did some deep breaths, said a prayer, and was like, no, like I'm going, like there's no way I'm turning back now. And I'm sure that everything is going to work out. And it really did. And I think since then, fear is something that always is with you. And I think even still, I get like a lot of nerves like the night before, the morning of a big trip. But I've learned that like that to kind of use that fear as like gas to propel me forward. It's like if I'm really scared of something, I mean, obviously there's some things you should be scared of, but I think most of the time it's all in our heads, and we're just like imagining the absolute worst case scenario, which very rarely comes to pass. So instead, I try to see that fear of something as just like, well, this is me pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And if I beat this fear by doing it, then like it's going to empower me and make me feel so much more confident in like my ability to adapt, to learn new things, and to grow.
Yeah. So kind of flipping it and seeing it as okay, it shows up, but it's a good thing in the end. If I'm a little afraid, maybe that means I'm actually pushing things in a good direction. Like maybe I should be doing things that I'm a little afraid of in a way. What did the solo travel experience teach you about travel and about yourself?
Something I wrote down after one of my trips, and it might have been after that one, but I found that when I solo travel, I'm rarely actually alone unless I choose to be, unless I'm kind of like, I just want to have a day like mostly by myself, do some reflecting, some thinking, and just like kind of recharge. But most of the time, I seem to always end up connecting with people, locals or other travelers in one way or another, making friends, either, just for that day, the next couple days, and finding good company to spend it with. And on that trip to Cartagena, Colombia, I started using couch surfing for the first time. I didn't actually like stay with a host at their place, but I used like the Hangouts feature to connect with a local who lived there. He was actually not Colombian by birth, but he had been living there for quite a few years, and thankfully he spoke pretty good English. And he was a chef at a restaurant. And he was like, my first night, he was like, "Hey, if you want to come to my restaurant, eat dinner, would love to meet you." And then it happened to be Dia de Amor y Amistad, Day of Love and Friendship, which is kind of like the Latin American version of Valentine's Day. But it also, which is cool, like it also includes like friendship, not just like for romance. So like groups of friends get together and go out. So I ended up going out to dance with him and like 10 other coworkers. So he introduced me to all of them. Everybody was super friendly. They were all locals, and we went dancing like salsa, bachata, cumbia, like all the different Latin dances, which I had like no experience in, but all the girls in the group were super sweet and like kind of led me and taught me some of the steps, and we had a really awesome time, and everybody was super friendly. And then now I know like 10 people, and they introduced me to more people, so it was like I had friends for like the whole trip just from that one night.
Right. You're off and running. That's amazing. What's the number one advice you would give to somebody planning a solo trip?
Well, I think the most important thing, if you want to you want to meet people, and I think you should to try to connect with people because that makes the whole experience so much richer, especially if you can get to know some locals. It's really about like having the right mindset, like opening up your mind and your heart to like connect with people, even people that you perceive as being very different from you, or maybe not having a lot of like common ground. But you'd be surprised. It's like you can find some common ground to talk about with almost anyone in the world you meet. And the more that you push yourself out of your comfort zone to talk to strangers and get to meet people, like the more comfortable you get doing it, it's just a matter of practice. And there's so many good ways to connect with people online in like a safe space and like establish have a conversation, establish some common ground, and feel comfortable then meeting them in person. Because of course, you should be concerned about your physical safety and not take any unnecessary risks. Go to places that are, not like necessarily the tourist area or like safe part of a city, especially in countries where safety can be a concern. So I love the couch surfing community. It's awesome. I've really only had good experiences with all the people I've met in person, but I think like using couch surfing or like, on Facebook, you can find a travelers expats group in like any city pretty much in the world. Using like online as a way to connect with people and start a conversation, make sure they seem cool, and then planning to meet up in person is a great way to connect with locals.
Yeah. Have you done that a lot? Sounds like you have.
Yeah, I have. I've pretty much since that trip in 2017, I've posted like every solo trip, especially on Couchsurfing, because you can, post your trips publicly, and then usually locals will reach out to you, sometimes offering to host you, sometimes just offering local recommendations or to meet up and like show you around their town, city. And that's been an amazing way to connect with locals and other travelers who are there the same dates and also, interested in doing some of the same activities. So I think that's been my main way to connect with people in like a kind of planned way. But then, spontaneously, I always seem to meet interesting people like on group tours, free walking tours. I like going to like language exchanges sometimes. And in the couchsurfing community, there's also like events so you can find like language exchanges, meetups for travelers and locals. So yeah, I found like once I started doing it, it was just so easy to meet people that now it's always like, dang, I can never seem to meet up with all the people that I want to. I was in Lima, Peru, and like the couchsurfing community is so active there. I had like so many message requests and like, dang, I'm only here for like a week. There's no way I'm going to be able to meet all these people. It stinks like having to choose, but you just find those you seem to have like the best connection with and plan a meetup.
Yeah. Cool. Your girlfriend is Mexican, right?
Yeah, she is.
Where did you guys meet?
We met like my second week in Mexico in 2021, October of 2021. We were both staying at the same hotel, Sayulita, and super small co-working space. I think like 12, 15 seats. I showed up kind of late, like 10 a.m. or so on a Monday, and there was only a couple seats left. And I was like, "Oh, who's this cute girl that's definitely not from the States? Definitely looks Mexican. Like, let me strike up a conversation with her." And so I sat next to her. We have a funny story that it was like I said hi, and I was like, "Excuse me, would you mind like scooting over for a minute so I can plug my long extension cord in with lots of ports to plug in my computer and my second monitor because I had like a pretty big setup at that time just to work a little more efficiently." And I was like, "Oh, and if you need, I have extra ports, so if you need to charge anything." wanted to show I could be a provider, you know. So I asked her out to lunch after we chatted a little bit. We went for some fish tacos and ended up going to watch the sunset on the beach, a baby turtle release into the ocean, and then dinner. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Wow. Okay, that was the first date. Sounds very romantic.
Yeah, we were definitely pretty blessed. Got like one of the best sunsets in the whole time at Sayulita, so that was pretty cool. Took that as a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just interesting because when you think about, you have this relationship now, like the things that will come from travel that you cannot predict when you go. I mean, can you imagine if you just never had the conversation and never asked to go work from Mexico, like you guys wouldn't even know each other.
Right. Yeah, my life could have headed in a completely different direction.
I mean, it's crazy. And you have a real connection to Latin America. And we can talk about your recent trip there. I know you mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about like the sort of the tourist versus traveler mentality. What is your draw to Latin America? Is it just that you speak the language? And of course, it's much easier to connect when you're speaking the language, and always awesome to travel through Spanish speaking countries when you speak Spanish. But, many areas explore the world, but you seem that you concentrate there. Is it more practical? Is it more just like a love? Do you feel a connection to Latin America? What is it?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination. I've been learning, continuing to learn Spanish, but now it's been, a long time since high school that I've been learning, and I'd say like really learning, like daily practice since like 2017. So that makes a huge difference. Now I'm to the point where I can converse about most topics with people and feel confident, even in group conversations, which is always tough. That made a huge difference. And I think it was a big motivation to me, like when picking what language to focus on learning, like how many countries can I actually travel to and like use this language? And I was like, like Spanish opens up like a higher number of countries than any other language.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I speak Norwegian. So it's like, it just opens up so many. Kidding. No, I know it is. I mean, that is when you pick a language like that, you get a lot of options.
But I think two big motivations for why Latin America was always a dream for me was when growing up, like I didn't know anybody that traveled Latin America really. Like family members, friends of the family, and then like friends in college and stuff. Like everybody went to like Europe, maybe like Southeast Asia, maybe like Cancun to go like an all-inclusive resort. But I didn't know like anybody that like, really like got off the tourist scene in Mexico or went to like South America to like Patagonia, really far away places. So I think because I learned so little for most of my like early life, from like direct stories that I heard from other people that I knew, that it was like, because it's more unknown, it's like more intriguing. And because of the language barrier, it's like, I know it's going to be like harder in some ways, but that just makes like the challenge more exciting.
Tell us a bit about your recent trip were you in Patagonia where are you traveling with your girlfriend all this time, or do you guys just meet up at different places? Like, I'm not sure what the situation is with her work and your work. And well, I know you just got laid off pretty recently. Congratulations. No, this is the only place because you sent me a message. You're like, hey, I want you to be the first to know I got laid off from my corporate job of 7 years with 3.5 months severance and stock pay coming. And then I'm going to Argentina. And you kind of said like, I'm still glad that after all these years, Zero to Travel is still one of the places you can come to celebrate getting fired or getting laid off. Anybody that's gotten fired or laid off, you want to reach out and you need somebody to celebrate with, because everybody around you is like, what are you going to do? And you're like, I'm going to travel. Then you can always send a message to me if you need somebody to celebrate with you. Okay, there you go. I had to get it out there, Kyle. I just want people to know they can feel good about these things.
Yes, 100%. And thanks for the support. I appreciated that. that you
For
understood
sure.
exactly where I was at in my mindset. And it was really amazing timing because it was like 2 weeks before I was going to leave Mexico City, where I had been living for like 5 months with my girlfriend and working remotely. I had to go back. Well, I went back to Florida and for like a month to go to a friend's bachelor party and wedding, and then to visit my family. And then I had already booked before I got laid off my flight from Chicago to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I was planning a very different trip, like spending a couple weeks to a month in each place, working online. And when you're working full time, you really only have like 8 days a week or 8 days a month that are totally free unless you take vacation days. So it's like, to me, a month usually goes pretty fast if it's a place with a lot to see and a lot to experience. But then after I got laid off with like perfect timing, but not much time to actually plan the rest of the trip and how it was changing. I'm like, well, it's going to be a very different kind of trip now. I'll definitely travel a bit faster. And now I don't have to worry about the like internet connectivity thing for work. So yeah, I'm going to go to like all the places in Patagonia, do the trekking that I've wanted to do for probably like 15 years since I first learned about Patagonia and saw pictures of like Torres del Paine and Mount Fitzroy. So it totally changed the type of trip. And it was really fun challenge because I have traveled with only, buying the ticket there and no return ticket. But I'm usually quite a planner where I like to do a lot of research online, and I know like, okay, these are all the places I'm going to stay. Maybe I make reservations at least for the accommodation in advance, and I have like a list of like, these are the top activities at each place. So I kind of have a rough itinerary, but this time it was like, okay, my whole original plan just went out the window like weeks before the trip. Of course, I was so busy with friends and family in the States that I didn't really have time to do any research. Um, but I did have enough time at least to research like the weather and stuff because, South America's reverse the seasons and everything. So it was basically like, all right, I'm spending 5 days in Buenos Aires. I booked a flight to Ushuaia at the end of the world. And I was like, well, and then from there, I can only go north basically. Um, and I wanted to get to El Chaltén in Argentina to do trekking like before most of the routes closed for snow and for the winter. So I was like, that was basically the only plan, and the rest was all figured out along the way.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Now, back to the show. Because I was in those areas in like 05, 06, and I remember it was like same. I had like 3.5 months to just travel and trek and do all sorts of things. It was an incredible time. What is it like traveling through those? I'd love to go back to those places now and just see how much they've changed. I mean, what's the travel experience like down there? I mean, at the time, like I remember we'd find, places to stay. It just like people would show up when the bus pulled up and would just like show you like physical pictures of their, houses or where rooms you could stay in and things like that. I don't know if that still happens, if it's all just everybody's online. It's been so long. I'm just curious what the experience was like. How's the infrastructure? Any tips or advice you have for people that are wanting to go and explore the wilds of Patagonia? Love to hear it.
Yeah, I was really amazed. Prior to getting to Argentina, I'd spent about 2 years in total living and traveling in Mexico. So I kind of got used to how things were there. Well, I should say here because I'm back here in Mexico City now. But so that was, and I had been around a few places in like Central America and Colombia. So I had an idea how that scene was as far as traveling. And Argentina was totally different. I would say like a lot better organized as far as the tourist infrastructure. And I was amazed like just how easy it was to travel around. Like, you know, I decided to go mostly with Airbnbs just because of like ease of booking And then also something to know about like Argentina and Chile, and I think Peru also is like if you pay with a credit card, a foreign credit card, you don't have to pay like the tourist tax on the accommodation, but locals do. So that's something that saves you some money and just, makes things a little easier because a lot of the accommodations still in Argentina were only accepting cash. I was surprised to find out, which I think is just because of the economy and inflation situation. But so I did Airbnb, which just kind of made it easier. And also I kind of like that experience of staying more in like something that feels a little bit more like a home, having the kitchen to be able to cook some to save money on that aspect. And I took buses mostly through Argentina and found them to be quite affordable and comfortable and just a great way to see more of the beautiful nature between one point and another, which I really liked.
Okay. So basing out of Airbnbs, traveling around, doing some sort of like trekking type of adventures. How long were you in Patagonia?
Um, it was about a month and a half in total. Probably like 3 weeks in Argentina, 3.5 weeks, and then like 4 weeks in Chile on the Chilean side of Patagonia.
I don't know what you were spending or if you care to share, but I'm just curious, like that sort of style of travel, what would somebody expect to spend visiting and kind of having a similar type of trip, let's say?
Sure. Yeah, I haven't actually broken down like what my daily budget was, but I would say, yeah, accommodations. I was there in kind of shoulder season, so that did make it a bit more affordable for sure and easier to book things last minute, which was nice because I was arriving in May and I think I left Patagonia at like the end of April. I'm sorry, May, the end of June, basically. Um, so Airbnbs, I think I was usually spending around like 30 to $35 a night to have a private place. Usually just like a very simple like studio apartment. I stayed in a couple like container homes, apartments, which were cool. Um, so I found that to be pretty affordable. I tried to buy groceries and at least eat like breakfast and make sandwiches to take hiking and stuff like that. So I was only eating out like one meal a day to keep food costs down. And that can definitely, I mean, Patagonia is the most expensive part of Argentina and Chile. So you definitely see that in the restaurant prices. But, Argentina, they're famous for the delicious empanadas. So you can always go to that as a cheap option to get something hot and quick that you can eat on the go. So I ate a lot of empanadas. And then, tried to just have a couple nicer sit down meals here and there to keep the budget down. And yeah, tours really varies depending on what kind of tour. Some of them can be pricier, like I did the train to the end of the world through the Tierra del Fuego National Park, which was really memorable. Definitely one of the more expensive ones. And then, like on the Chilean side in Patagonia, the tours were definitely more expensive, but worth it for sure. One thing to know is like I know Torres del Paine is a huge like one of the top destinations for anybody going to Patagonia. I didn't know or realize because I didn't have time to do enough research that like once you get into May, it's like considered the winter season. So from like May to whenever spring is, you can't really enter the park or do any trekking without a guide. So that made things a little bit more expensive and kind of ruled out doing like the W Trek or something like that because I couldn't really afford to like pay to have a guide come with me, have to pay for their accommodations in the refugios and all that too. Um, so those are things to take in consideration for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, because I was there during summer months, so didn't have that issue.
But the great thing going in shoulder season is it was so easy to just make up the itinerary as I went. Like literally, sometimes I was like, well, I have my bus ticket to the next place. I better book somewhere to stay. And then usually, usually my MO, because I was like, well, I'm here. Like, why am I going to research online when I can just like talk to locals that I meet or like people that work in the tourism business? I just enjoy the in-person connection. So I would always like show up, usually try to head right to the tourist information center, get a map of wherever I was staying, and then tell them like what I was trying to do. Like I'm trying to do trekking, or like I heard these are the top sites, but tell me like what do you recommend? And I can say the people that work in tourist information centers are some of the like kindest and most helpful people that you're going to meet traveling. So just like go to them and just tell them like what you're trying to do, and they'll usually point you in the right direction. And half the time they practically like plan your itinerary for the time you're there for you. So it just makes it so easy.
Yeah, can be still underutilized. Everybody. It's so easy to go online, but it's always nice to go and talk to somebody in person. They have different things to say, different things to share. You mentioned a bit about like you were traveling as a worker and kind of like the 8 days you would have a month and how that would fly by versus being disconnected and just travel for travel's sake, let's call it. I don't know if you were like, I mean, you had the severance and everything like that. Everybody can choose this experience in different ways. For some people, it might be like that, get laid off, you get a severance. You're like, all right, cool. I'm like free. I got this gap. Let me take it. Let me go travel. It might be saving up money to go travel so you don't have to work and travel, because the remote work thing does obviously hugely impact the travel experience. You have to be near internet. There's certain infrastructure you need to keep your job going. It might be more of like basing and doing little excursions here and there. How are those two? Because you have had those two types of travel experiences like very close to each other, and it's all pretty fresh. So I'm just wondering, how much you've thought about that, how much that sort of, I just want to hear your thoughts on that, and any advice or tips or just insights you have to share around that.
Yeah, the remote working and traveling, which I did, mostly in Mexico, and then also for 3 months in Madrid, Spain, and for a couple weeks in Marrakesh, Morocco. Um, it's been amazing experiences, and I think the cool thing about working remotely from different places in the world is that it forces you more to live like a local, in that like you are working, you have responsibilities, you have to establish a certain amount of routine, like you have to, figure out where the grocery store is, like because usually it's just not practical or affordable to eat out all the time. Um, and I enjoy cooking. It's something that I try to do wherever I am, and to like I'm one of those people that enjoys going to the grocery store and seeing all the different ingredients, trying out some new things, trying to cook some new things, take some cooking classes if you can. That's definitely a recommendation. Um, so I really enjoyed that, how I felt like because I had a job and I had like that responsibility, it forces you to live a little bit more of like a, quote unquote, like normal day-to-day life, which I think in some ways like helps can make it easier to connect with locals, because one, if you choose to stay in places for longer, which I definitely recommend people, especially if they're starting out with remote work, is like it seems like so much time, but spend a month in the first place you're going to go, so that you're not like stressing that like, oh, like in a week I have to pack up and move to a new place and start all over again. Because for me, it usually took me like a week or two to like, okay, find like where I want to go for my groceries, like what coffee shops are like good to like, they got good internet and it's not too loud. Like it's a place I can get some work done if I want to like get out of the home or the co-working space and just change scenery. Um, kind of find the places that you like to go, figure out like whatever main activity you want to do, whether it be like hiking or surfing, like where are the places to go, like if I'm going to have a guide or like a surf coach, like who can I do that with, And then like week 2 and week 3, you start, I felt like I started to feel like more at home, kind of get into those routines. And then by the 4th week, usually I'm like, okay, like now I feel like, pretty at home here as obviously a visitor still, but then um, spending like 2 to 3 months in a place that really has like a lot to do. And if you're doing like a sport or something that you're practicing a couple times a week, I found that to be kind of a sweet spot where it's like I feel like I got to experience most of the places and things that I wanted to do in a place, but not like stayed too long that I like got bored and felt like it was too routine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Those are a lot of advantages.
For sure. And then to contrast that with this trip that I'm just wrapping up, kind of 6 months sabbatical, this is the first time that I've ever traveled for more than like 2 weeks without work. So that's been amazing. It was pretty weird at first. But I think like since I did like a month-long visit in the States and it was like friends and family, it was like made the adjustment period easier and then was kind of used to it once I got to South America. But yeah, having that freedom to just make up the itinerary as I went, realizing that I didn't have to like be back by a certain date. It was more about like managing my budget well, um, and kind of managing what I wanted to do versus the fact that winter was coming, um, and that was gonna like limit my ability to hike in certain places. So I was like in a little bit of a rush to make it north from Ushuaia, Argentina to El Chalten, Argentina. And then once I had my week there and trekked as much as I could, I went further north into Patagonia Verde, they call it in Chile, which is, totally different than the Argentinian side, all green and lush, but not snow. So I was like, okay, well now I can slow down and really go at whatever pace I want to because I'm not worried about it starting to snow and get super cold and kind of restrict what hiking and activities I could do. So that was an amazing experience, just having the open-ended itinerary and being able to make it up as I go and allow connecting with locals through couch surfing and tour guides that I met, people that I met, Airbnb hosts, other ways of connecting with people and kind of allowing time for spontaneity, which I think is really important when you have the time. It's like an itinerary is great, but I think like don't plan too much because otherwise you can miss out on, getting that invitation to go to Argentinian Paria with like a group of friends from couch surfing, and take part in like grilling out a bunch of meats, drinking some wine, dancing, singing karaoke, which I did in Mendoza, Argentina, and so many unique experiences that you can get invited to if you put yourself out there and connect with locals and other travelers. But if you're like, oh, but I already have like every flight and every bus ticket booked, like you're really kind of restricted and you might have to say no to some things just because you've already like booked so much. So I think leaving room for spontaneity is one of my biggest recommendations.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you about Mexico because you spent so much time in Mexico. What are some of the places that you would say, oh, this would be, somebody listening say, I want to spend like, some decent quality time in some places in Mexico. Give us a little bit of Kyle's flavors, Kyle's choices, some of your picks.
Sure. Well, I would say, Mexico has something for everyone. If you're a mountain lover, there's plenty of mountains and places to go hiking. Of course, it has so much beaches, and I'm a beach lover, warm weather guy, and I got into surfing when I came to Mexico in 2021. So I've spent the most time besides Mexico City on the Pacific coast of Mexico and really love it there. I mean, the Caribbean side is beautiful too and has great beaches, but what I love is the Pacific coast is really where the mountains meet the ocean. in so many parts of it. So you have like the best of both worlds where you have mountains and ocean close to each other. The beaches are so different because of the mountains and the volcanic fault line, making all these huge volcanic rocks and things like that. So it's like every bend in the coast is like a different, very different beach. You've got your beaches that are, bays and more sheltered for swimming and snorkeling, which I love. And then you got your surf beaches and great sunsets. Some of my favorite places on the Pacific coast have been like going north to south, Cabo San Lucas, spent a couple weeks there. It is one of the most expensive parts of Mexico, so I would recommend like if you're on a budget, like looking to go in like shoulder season, because you can get great discounts on accommodation and it's not so packed. Spent a couple different visits, probably like 4 or 5 months in total in the Puerto Vallarta area. Didn't actually stay in Vallarta that much time, but there's a lot of great like smaller towns that are more chill if that's like the vibe you're going for. Me and my girlfriend spent a summer at really fall, but it's still like summer weather in Mexico, in Bucerias, Mexico, which is like 30 minutes, 40 minutes north of Puerto Vallarta. And I would recommend that as a place to stay, especially as like a remote worker, because they do have a lot of like modern apartments, good internet, better than like Sayulita and a lot of the beach towns further north, but you're still kind of in the middle of everything where you're like a half an hour from Vallarta, half an hour from Sayulita and like the smaller beach towns. So it's pretty easy to get around and explore the whole area. Spent a couple months in Ixtapa, Zihuatanejo in the state of Guerrero, which was a really awesome experience. It's actually considered one of the safest parts of Mexico, and I would say the vibe there is definitely more of like a family vacation, like retiree place to go. So it's if you're not so much into like the party scene, it's a good place to go because it's not so noisy, not as many like there's not many people like getting drunk on the beach and like blasting loud music and stuff like that. It's a much more like chill vibe, but still like good surfing beaches close by and a lot of good places to swim and relax. Zihuatanejo's on one of the biggest bays in Mexico, so there's a lot of good beaches there to just chill out, swim, and amazing seafood. That's something I enjoy. Like any beach place in Mexico, you got great seafood. And then, of course, Oaxaca's got great beaches, great food, and is a great place to visit too. Spend some time there.
Is there surfing in Zihuatanejo?
Not in the town itself, but about like 45 minutes north of there. There's a beach. There's some beaches for surfing. There's Troncones and La Saladita, and some really good spots further north and south of Zihuatanejo too, I believe.
So what's next, man? What's next for you?
Yeah, so just got back to Mexico City last Friday, like 4 days ago. So kind of settling into an apartment here, getting ready to start a new remote job, doing digital marketing, which is what I've been doing for most of the last going on like 13, 14 years now. So getting a little bit back to my, quote unquote normal life, as you say, but yeah, still thinking about traveling here within Mexico, and yeah, we'll see what's on the horizon for next year for more international travel and hopefully trying some new countries.
You're feeling refreshed. You don't have you're excited to start working again, or are you like, I guess it's something I got to do.
Yeah, it's yes, I mean certainly a little bit of mixed emotions. Like I wish could have taken a year-long sabbatical if I could afford it. But I'm very thankful for the time I had, and it's good to be back in a place that feels very homey after spending like almost a year in total here in Mexico City between various stays, and I got friends here, my girlfriend, so it's good to be back and to see those people again, and to I've kind of missed like cooking as much as I like to, and just having a little bit more routine, like get back to my daily exercise and yoga, and make sure I'm staying healthy. Sometimes, some of those good daily practices kind of fall by the wayside when you're traveling faster, just because it's tough to keep up with them. So excited for all the good things that come with staying in a place for longer.
Yeah. Well, welcome home. I'm not sure if it feels like home there, if you plan on like living in Mexico forever. Do you get that sense that you might live there for a while?
Yeah, it's been a place I keep coming back to, which wasn't the plan, of course, when I started traveling in 2021, but it's a huge country. There's so much to see, and I've really enjoyed like slow
Wonderful
traveling
people.
around the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've made so many great friends here now, that it does really, and my girlfriend is from here, so it's been an amazing experience traveling around the country with her. And also like having like a home base, and living close to her so we can spend more time together or traveling together. So it's great. It's like having that experience of a place that feels like home now after spending so much time here, but still a place that I still feel like I've only scratched the surface. Like I've only made it to like half of the states, and some of those only kind of passing through. So I still feel like there's so much that I want to see here, which is good to feel that mix of comfort and adventure in one place, which is great.
Well, I mean, thanks again for reaching out. Thanks for staying in touch. Congratulations on going from zero to travel in many ways through your journey. I appreciate you sharing it. I don't think you have anything to promote here, but if you do, you can. I don't know if you got a website or anything like that.
Just Instagram at this point, really. It's at Kyle De La Wild, and you can check out some of my travel pictures and stuff there. I'm way behind on posting because I took so many pictures on this trip, but gonna get some more content up there soon. Also, getting putting it out there to give myself some accountability, but planning to do some writing about this trip and the adventures, and hoping to do a book about the experiences of living and traveling in Mexico, and then this big trip through South America. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I'm sure I'll be sharing more on social media whenever I actually get that writing going.
Cool. We'll link up to that. I know you're passionate about storytelling, so that's exciting to hear. Do you want to leave us with some words of wisdom, a quote, perhaps, anything as we let you go? A Mexican saying?
Yeah, I think something that I was talking about recently with other travelers that kind of really struck a chord with me is, I think it's an interesting debate, this one of like traveler versus tourist. Um, but I think for me, a more meaningful way to look at it is like connected versus disconnected travel. And by that, I mean like connecting with people, other travelers and locals. And I think for me, that's really what has like impacted my life and my travels, like in ways I could never have hoped or imagined. So I would just really encourage people to like make the effort to connect with locals in one way or another. Be open to talking to strangers. Challenge yourself to speak your second, third, or fourth language, even if you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Like as long as you can get your point across, like people really appreciate that, and you'll be amazed how your travels will change when you start connecting with locals and other travelers from all around the world. And for me, that's kind of guided a lot of my travels. Like when I was in Colombia, I happened to meet two friends that were from Mexico City. And then because of that, I had the courage to like visit one of the biggest cities in the world on a vacation. And then because of that, I decided to come to Mexico in 2021 and start digital nomading here. And that alone has changed my life in ways I never have imagined. So I love visiting people that I meet on trips to like see them in their home place. And I think that's a really cool way to keep the friendship and the connection going.
Amazing. Thanks, Kyle. Stay in touch.
Thanks, Jason. It's been fun talking. Thanks for having me.
There you have it. Thank you once again to Kyle Cohenour for stopping by the show. We're going to link up to his Instagram and everything else that was mentioned here in the show notes. Now, let me wrap this up with a quote that I think summarizes this episode so well, and something that maybe you've heard it or some version of it, but I think, or I want to say I guarantee, but I think this is a great way to send you off into this coming year. First, don't forget zerototravel.com/newsletter. It is free, and I send it out once a week. You can sign up for that over there if you haven't done so already. Okay, this quote from Bill Gates, who said, quote, "Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. I know, it's a great one, right? It's so true. As we come into the new year and we have all these high, lofty goals and expectations, I do it too. I can't help myself. I get into this sort of planning mode, and you get big ideas, you get excited about the possibilities. That's a good thing. But you also don't want to set yourself up for failure by, making your goals unattainable. But at the same time, you want to make them a little bit unattainable, perhaps stretch goals, something to work towards. I don't know. It's a balance. I haven't quite figured it out yet. I'm just really trying to just breathe and just kind of let it sort of come out. Let the ideas, the big picture thinking, the thoughts of where I am and where I might want to go come out in sort of a natural way, and try to think big. And at the same time, just try to understand, who am I today? What do I want? Like, who am I right now? Not who I was 6 months ago or a year ago. Don't make the goals based off of who you think you are. Base them off of who you are right now. And I think that's an important distinction that I try to make, because it's easy to box ourselves in sometimes. Maybe we're not interested in that thing we've been interested in for 5 years, and all of a sudden we're not interested in that anymore. Okay, we got to be honest with that. And, the way I've been able to strike the balance, I think, at the most minimal level, if you get kind of overwhelmed with the goal setting and, this in the coming year, it's just a simple question of, hey, are, these ideas, these big picture goals, these things I'm kind of working towards for the coming year, are they generally on the path that's leading me towards the sort of the direction I want to be in life? Is it on the path of where I want to be and where I want to go? Generally, right? I mean, sometimes we don't really have a specific destination where we want to go, but we have a general sort of path where we feel comfortable living. For me, that might mean, I'd love to do creative work, right? Like, if I'm choosing projects, trying to decide on different things, is that keeping me in that creative mode? Is it allowing me to stretch my creative wings? Is it allowing me to surround myself with, certain people or acquire certain skills that I'm interested in acquiring? That sort of thing. And it's just keeping me in that general direction. Because as we know, once we get on a path, there are all sorts of detours that pop up, and bumps in the road. And, we can go on and on with the metaphors, but you get what I'm saying. Now, coming back to this Bill Gates quote to wrap it up, this is why we shouldn't feel too bad, right? We all overestimate what we can get done in a year, and we're going to have those big goals. You might have them, but just remember, we all also underestimate what we can do in a longer period of time. So, all that said, be persistent with your big goals. Tackle the coming year, but don't forget to think in those 5 to 10 year kind of chunks. Is this sort of putting me in that direction that I'm generally wanting to go and explore? That's all. Just wanted to bring that up. I'll read that quote one more time and then I'll leave you. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next year. Peace and love to you and yours. Happy holidays. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.